A roller coaster is the best analogy I can think of when it comes to navigating infertility. It is a combination of the most devastating lows, short-lived highs, massive falls, and whether you like it or not, you can't get off. So while you can't stop the stress and the emotional ups and downs of this journey, can you learn to navigate them in a way that makes the process easier? I believe you can, and in today's episode, I want to share with you what I did to make my own life easier when I was trying to conceive.
Welcome to your journey to fertility. This is the podcast that blends science with spirit to give you all the tools you need as you navigate your fertility journey. I'm your host, Jennifer Edmonds, and for the last 15 years, I've been helping women on their journeys to motherhood and beyond. I believe that combining the latest scientific research along with the best energetic and mindset practices will help you to avoid putting your life on hold and bring you closer to your baby. Each week, you'll learn ways to support your fertility and trust your body so that you can stop stressing that you'll never have your baby and finally walk your path to motherhood. This is the Your Journey to Fertility podcast.
Welcome back to the podcast. This episode today is coming from a question that I was sent in an email about how to navigate the emotional ups and downs, the entire roller coaster of the journey that is trying to conceive. And especially when you have been through treatments, and especially treatments that haven't been successful, you just have to keep getting back on this roller coaster, don't you? When you have no idea when it's going to end, how it's going to end, or what you're going to have to endure in the meantime. It's a lot. When you think about it, this is so much to deal with, and we are not taught, we are not given the tools, and it is a really hard place to find ourselves in. So I want to acknowledge how deeply difficult and personal that these challenges can be. And you really don't understand the depths of infertility unless you have been there. I absolutely believe that. So in today's episode, I want to share with you a few practical tips and tools that really helped me when I was trying to conceive. And these are the things that I share with my students on a regular basis as well, to really help them navigate this process emotionally as well. I remember the last round of IVF I did, where it was one of those cycles that was perfect on paper. Everything was perfect. My hormone levels were exactly where they needed to be, which was a very big deal for me. We had perfect lining. We had these two little embryos, which were a wonderful grade. They were looking so healthy, so happy. And I was convinced that after this last transfer, I was pregnant. And in that 2-week wait, I had every pregnancy symptom under the sun, which of course we know comes with being pumped full of hormones and progesterone after you have been through IVF. But I had no doubt in my mind that I was pregnant, but I wasn't. And I remember I got that call from my fertility clinic, and I was in shock. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I think I just dropped the phone, and my husband had to take it from me, and I will never forget that moment. And I think that this was one of the hardest things that I experienced. And I had been through 3 rounds of IVF at this stage, so it wasn't really a new process for me. But how do you come back from that when you've put everything into a cycle? You can't have done anything more perfectly, and yet it still doesn't work. Fast forward, it was about 6 or 7 months after that last round of IVF hadn't worked, I found out I had fallen pregnant naturally. And whilst this was a huge shock, this is something that I never thought would be possible, especially no doctor had told me it would ever be possible. But we were over the moon, and all of the signs were looking great. My hormone levels are rising, but we ended up losing that baby when I was 8 weeks pregnant. Now, don't get me wrong, this was a really difficult time in my life. I struggled to get out of bed. I couldn't go to work. I really struggled with so many things at this time. But it wasn't my lowest point compared to when that last round of IVF hadn't been successful. So what did I do in that time between being at my absolute rock bottom lowest and then going through a pregnancy loss and not losing hope? I think there's a lot in there, and there is obviously a lot that worked for me, and a lot of that was personal things that really, I found so helpful on my journey. But over time, I've been able to expand this repertoire of tools that I have and use them to help my students in the process as well. So this episode today is a combination of everything that worked for me and then refining them just a little bit in order to help others. So this episode is split up into 4 parts. And I think it's one of those episodes where I think it will help you to have a pen and paper, maybe grab your journal. So if you are listening to this while you are driving or out walking somewhere, perhaps just save it, come back to it later when you can sit down for a few minutes with a pen and paper. And I think you'll get a lot out of it from doing it this way. So the first thing that I want you to do is to name the emotions. Describe all of the common emotions that are coming up for you, whether this is grief or guilt or anger or jealousy, shame, sadness, fear. And it can be all of the quote unquote good emotions as well. Excitement, joy, hope, possibility. I just want you to write them all down. And emotions are really important to name because when we name them, we can start working with them somatically, and that means within the body. And when you are able to bring those emotions into a felt sense, a physical sense, that is one of the best ways for us to help process them. So write down all your emotions and then pick one. For example, maybe you pick fear. Where does this show up in your body? And as I have spoken about many times before on the podcast, you're going to need to get yourself into a state of regulation in order to do this kind of work. So we don't want to be trying to connect with our body and analyze our thoughts and our emotions if we're feeling really stressed or overwhelmed. So whatever helps you to get into that regulated place, maybe it is a few long, slow, deep breaths, a few minutes of meditation, a mindful walk, anything, maybe the last thing at the end of your day after you have gone through your nightly routine and you're just feeling a little more calm. So where do they show up in your body? And I like to close my eyes and just sort of scan. And for a lot of these, what I would deem sort of more difficult or negative emotions, I feel a lot of them in my throat. I kind of get this restriction or this kind of lump in my throat. So where does it show up in your body? Tightness in your stomach, heaviness in your chest. Maybe you just feel like a general sense of dread kind of coming from your forehead. I want you to really get present with where that emotion, is showing up within your body. The next thing I want you to do is to normalize these emotions. And as I said before with, air quotes, we deem certain emotions good or bad, but emotions don't know what they're doing. They don't come from a malicious place. So an emotion isn't coming up and presenting as anger because it's trying to upset you, or sadness is not coming up because it's trying to really bring you down and take that positive spin off your day. Your emotions are just emotions. And if you can start to recognize that, they're usually ways that your nervous system is trying to keep you safe. We take a lot of the power away from these ones that we would deem bad or unhelpful. So I want you to also recognize that it is very, very normal to feel a lot of these emotions all at once. For example, if a friend of yours announces a pregnancy, it is totally okay and very normal to feel completely devastated for yourself, a bit guilty that you feel jealous or, that you really, really wish that this had been your pregnancy. But at the same time, they're your friend, you love them. You can be happy for them. You can be excited and joyful for them. And the extremes of those two emotions are very hard to reconcile at once. And I find a lot of people struggle with that. I struggled with this a huge amount. So I want you just to name it. I feel this, but I also feel that. And I can feel both of those things at once. And sometimes the sadness does cancel out the excitement, but it doesn't mean that it's not there. So however that works for you to help process that, maybe journal on it a little bit. Maybe if you have a friend who is very open-minded and very supporting of your journey, perhaps you can speak to them, vocalize. Language is really powerful as well when processing emotions. Telling them how excited and over the moon you are for them, but at the same time, you are still so sad for yourself. Because we suffer so much of this journey in silence. I find that a lot of the emotions that come up, we feel a lot of shame around. They are very hard to process. So doing this kind of work to really bring to the surface what is there makes these emotions a lot easier to deal with. So that is our first part. I want you to really name everything that you're feeling and get in touch with how they're showing up in your body. Now, the second part of this episode is about your triggers. So obviously when we are triggered, that's when those emotions come up. And how do we handle them when it happens? So again, as I named before, noticing when those emotions are coming up and where they are present in your body is the first step. So we then need to go a little bit deeper and ask ourselves, when are these emotions and these triggers coming up? And there might be things that are happening over and over again for you that are within your control to perhaps reduce or avoid. So take a fresh page in your journal or in the notes that you are writing, and I want you to bring up an emotion that has been difficult for you lately: sadness, grief, fear, whatever it is. And what events or what situations have been triggering that emotion for you? Is it seeing a particular person at work? Is it a friend that keeps sending you pregnancy updates even though you've asked them not to? Is it social media? Is it that aunt or cousin that every time you see them, they make these really triggering comments that are super unhelpful? Now have a look at your list and ask yourself, are any of these avoidable? And I'm not saying that we need to run away from our emotions. Absolutely not. Maybe sometimes a little bit, that's okay. But no, that's not what this is about. So where can we lessen some of the burden that these triggers and then the emotions that follow are having on you? So if it's social media, this is a big one. Either massively clean up your social accounts, so mute or unfollow anyone who you find triggering, or put it away altogether. You can delete it off your phone. You can even delete it off your phone and then put in your phone settings that it's unsearchable, so it won't come up when you try to re-download it. I think it's a parental control, but you can do it to yourself. And whilst, yes, of course, you can always undo that and go and get Instagram again if you want to, the process of having to reconfigure your settings, go back to the Apple Store, download the app, is a lot more difficult than you feeling a little bit bored one day and you just pick up your phone, you start scrolling, and there you go, you're triggered once again. So it really helps you to become more mindful of how you are using social media. This is a big one that I find comes up a lot. And there are things that we can't avoid. Families, work situations. I mean, we all have families that we probably can't block off completely, and we have to do our jobs. But where can we reduce some of those things if possible? You know, is it a group that you go to lunch with at work and there's that one person in the group who is always triggering you? Perhaps they're pregnant, whatever it might be. Can you choose to have lunch with just one friend a couple of days a week? Or maybe you choose to have lunch on your own and just go for a walk, sit in the park, get some sunlight, whatever that might be. So really challenge yourself to look at how you can reduce some of these triggers. The next thing I like to mention is to set up boundaries and protect your emotional energy around these things that you find triggering. One way to do this is to fill up your cup before you go into a triggering situation. There are some things, like I said, that we can't avoid. We can't avoid going to work or seeing certain people. Maybe there is a baby shower that you have to go to. It's your friend, your sister, your cousin. And yes, we can always say no, but you know at the end of the day, it's going to be easier if you just go. But you can protect yourself a little bit beforehand. This is something you can do before going to the fertility clinic, doctor's appointments, anything where you know it's going to be a hard environment for you. So protecting your energy means things like, how can I regulate my nervous system, make me feel better about myself, my life, my journey in the present before I go and do that difficult thing? Because it's still going to be difficult, but at least you're coming from a higher starting point. So maybe you're coming from 90% rather than starting at 40 or 50%. So ways I like to do this, I used to make sure if I had to go do something difficult, I would first of all spend some time with my husband first. Because if no one else got what I was going through, he absolutely did. And it's just nice to not have to pretend with some people, right? And it's wonderful to have someone where you can just be like, you know what, this is really hard. I need you. I need a hug. I need to go for a walk. I need you to bring me a cup of coffee. Can we just sit and watch a movie together? And just having that connection is really important. Other ways you can do this, and your regulating tools are going to be what is personal for you. Go for a mindful walk. Go and get some sunlight. Spend time in nature. Be with your pets. Any other friends or family members that understand what you're going through and support your journey. Can you chat to them for a few minutes? Hear their voice. Anything that helps you. Meditation, mindfulness, yoga, breath work, all these things are amazing. When we're talking about triggers, I think one of the hardest parts around being triggered is this idea of comparison. And there are two parts to comparison that I find to get really difficult on this journey. The first is comparing yourself to others who are a lot further along than you are and that you wish you were. I used to get really triggered when I was going through infertility for the second time, when I saw families that had 2 or 3 children, especially ones that looked really close in age. It just broke me every time I saw a family like that. So becoming aware of your tendency to compare yourself to others, but it's not only comparison to others that have what you want, but also comparison to others on this journey that have it worse than us. And this is something that often gets overlooked. There is always going to be someone who has it worse than you, whether it is on their fertility journeys or in some other way in their life. And it's really easy to look at those people and say, well, they have it worse than me, so why am I complaining? I should just shut up and get on with it myself. I should just be happy with what I have. It doesn't work that way. Your brain doesn't understand levels of dysregulation or trauma. Your brain only understands that what is going on in your life is really overwhelming and really difficult. And it is so worth acknowledging that. So I want you to know that when you are triggered by anything that is going on, even in that way of, well, I should be more grateful, I should be more happy with my own life, this is something that you should not be comparing yourself to. So if you need to, journal a little bit around that, knowing what your triggers are, knowing how comparison tends to show up for you, and just have some compassion for yourself. We are always hardwired in our lives to look for the negative. If you are going to a new restaurant or staying at a new hotel or looking to book a new hotel, you're always going to go through the reviews, and we tend to click on the 1-star reviews first, right? Our brains are always looking for that negativity bias. So we are hardwired to look for everything that is going wrong in our lives. So I want you just to take stock of where you are comparing yourself, and again, where your triggers are and how they are showing up for you. All right, the third part that I want to get into is more of these practical tools for emotional resilience. And I want you to think of them like brushing your teeth. I want you to get to the point where you do these things so often and so regularly, you would feel weird or a bit kind of icky if you didn't. Just like if you went out for your day and you hadn't brushed your teeth in the morning, you're like, something feels a bit wrong. That's what we want to get to. I said this before on the podcast, but you can't go through the absolute depths of this journey without finding a way to support yourself on a deeper level. So being able to regulate your nervous system on a consistent, regular basis is absolutely essential. And this would be if you were going through anything that is difficult, illnesses or things that are happening within your family, difficult times in our lives, financial issues, anything at all. When it has been something that is very difficult and very overwhelming, and it has been going on for months or years at a time, this chronic stress, this chronic state of dysregulation has huge impacts on your body, your health, your overall health, and your fertility. So we need to find ways to minimize that. So it's going to be little practices that help you on a daily basis. Healing the grief and the loss of what you don't have and what your future didn't get to look like is a huge, huge step. I want you to acknowledge that. We can't discount what we've been through on this journey. It is a big deal. We get compared to things like a cancer diagnosis or a death in the family. The levels of anxiety and depression that are diagnosed within people who are going through infertility issues. This is not something that we should take lightly. So We go back through all of our regulating tools that I've spoken about before. Things like getting outside, finding ways to help you cope in the moment, whether that is taking a step back 5 minutes before you have to walk into the baby shower or the doctor's office. Take some slow, deep breaths. Rub your hands together. Do some EFT tapping. Whatever helps you to get into more of a state of regulation. And it's not always going to be a magic fix. Sometimes it's going to work more easily and better than others, but it is the consistent practice that I want you to really get used to doing. Another way I think that you can really work through your emotions on this journey is to journal. And whether you're a journaler or not, I'm actually not much of a journaler. I really struggle to get into it. I love writing, but journaling on its own, I really struggle with. So this was something that I really had to not force myself to do when I was struggling to conceive, but I really had to remind myself to do it more regularly, because when I did, it made a big impact. So one thing that really helped me is to use this prompt at the end of the day and write down, what is one emotion I've been carrying that I am ready to release, even just for today? So think about what's happened in your day. Where were you triggered? Where were you finding yourself in a place where you felt overwhelmed? You felt like everything was just hopeless. You couldn't get on with the next part of your day. We don't want to hold on to these things. And yes, they're going to keep coming up for us, and they're going to keep coming back and showing up in all different places. But the more we can lessen the load, the easier they become to bear. So name that emotion, name how it makes you feel, and then just say to yourself, you can repeat a few times over, I'm ready to release this, even just for today. And one more thing I want to mention on this idea of tools and sort of tips for regulating yourself is human connection. And that sounds really obvious. I mean, we all live with people. We all surround ourselves with people, but we get very isolated on this journey. It's a really lonely place to be. And it's so easy to shut yourself off from so many people. I would consider myself quite an extrovert. And throughout my journey of trying to conceive an IVF, I just didn't want to be around anyone. I didn't want to go out for dinners. I didn't want to go to people's houses. I didn't want to catch up. I didn't want to have to explain where I was at. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things. It is really exhausting. And yes, you do need time and space. But one of the best ways to regulate our nervous systems is to come into contact with others that are a safe space to hold that around you. So this can be your partner, and I know our partners are incredibly important if you are working with a partner on this journey. But if you're not, and even if you are, you need more than one person. So I encourage you to find who those people are. And they don't have to be people that you know enormously well. And that's kind of a misconception, that we need to be able to come into connection with these people who have known us our whole lives and really understand and really get our journeys, and you can talk to them about anything. But for nervous system regulation, that isn't actually the case. So it might be a therapist. For some people, talk therapy is very important. And in a lot of situations, being able to go and talk to someone about what you're going through, just from someone who's going to sit there from a completely objective place and listen, is wonderful. Maybe it's a sporting team. Maybe it is a hobby where you just get to be around a bunch of people that don't really know what's going on in your life or your fertility journey, and you don't have to explain it to them. You just get to be around people and it feels good. Maybe this is going to the gym or doing group workout classes or finding a running club or just anything that gets you with people that are in a good frame of mind. And I find that those sorts of things are where we really start to make change. Yes, we always need those deeper relationships to come back to, but that's a really wonderful place to really send a lot of those sort of more difficult days and to make them more manageable as well. So the last part of this, the fourth part, is I want to give you some spiritual practices for emotional healing. And this is going to be what works for you. Last week on the podcast, I did an awesome interview with my friend Nancy Weiss, who is an energy healer and an intuitive. And I really encourage you to go back and listen to that episode if you haven't already. It was super woo. It was a lot of fun. And she went through lots and lots of wonderful ways that you can create little rituals and little kind of sort of daily routines on your own fertility journey that are quite spiritual. And that might be things around setting up an altar with a lot of meaningful objects for you where you sit and meditate, using crystals, using women's circles, and going through all of these wonderful little things that feel good on your journey. And Nancy talked about how it doesn't really matter what you do and what these rituals are, only that they feel comforting for you and they connect you more deeply to your body and your own journey. I really like the practice of visualization where you spend a couple of minutes every single day visiting your future self who has the life that you already want. And I have said this before to many, many people, so if you've heard this before, I'm sorry, but I'm going to say it again. If you're going to spend X amount of minutes, hours, days, weeks, months worrying about the future and what could go wrong, I really want you to spend at least 2 minutes a day considering what if you get everything you ever wanted. So this is a wonderful way to bring yourself into a place of what is possible. So spend a couple of minutes, zoom out, fast forward your life 5, 10, 15, 25 years into the future and see yourself with the family and the life that you dream about. Because when it comes down to it, we don't want the pregnancy test. We don't want the pregnancy. We don't even just want the baby. We want the life. We want all of the experiences that come with having that baby and that family. And that is ultimately what we're trying to achieve. And this does wonders for your nervous system. Your brain doesn't understand what is real or imagined. And we can prove this by looking at what trauma does and looking at how memories of difficult situations trigger the same cascade of physiological responses, the stress response within your body, as the actual event itself. So if memories can change the physiology of your body, then predicted future visualizations, as though it's a memory, can also change the way your body feels and the way that you act. So I really, really encourage you for a couple of minutes every day to go and visit your baby. So to finish up this episode, I just want to reassure you, and I know you hear this all the time, but honestly, it can't be said enough. You are not alone in this. It is such a big thing to go through. And I get messages and emails and, voice notes every week from people all around the world who are going through these things. So if you need a little help along your journey, please reach out to me. Know that you always can. I have so many resources and so many programs available where you can work with others who are on the same path as well and really get in touch with what helps you. The last thing I want to leave you with is something, I debated whether or not I wanted to say this, but I absolutely will. I know that everyone who has their family, everyone loves their babies. New parents are so in awe of their babies and they have so much infinite love, and everyone gets that, right? I understand that. But until you have been through the absolute lows that are the journey of infertility, when you finally have your baby in your arms, after how many years of heartbreak and treatments and endless procedures that you've been through, I'm sorry, but no one who hasn't been through infertility will understand what that's like. So when you get to that place where you finally have your baby in your arms, it is going to be like nothing you ever believed was possible. So I hope that is a hopeful way for you to finish this episode. Wherever you are listening to this, it would mean the world to me if you could subscribe to the channel, leave me a quick written review or a comment. That is the absolute best way to help get this podcast and all of these episodes out to as many people as possible. Now, next week on the podcast, we are going to be speaking with fertility dietitian and fertility coach, Whitney Gingerich, and she's going to be speaking to us about how to advocate for yourself on this journey. I think it follows really beautifully from everything that we've spoken about today, because it is a big world to navigate, especially when it comes to the medical path of things. How you can advocate for yourself, know what to ask your doctor, and know how to respond when you aren't getting the treatment that you think you need or deserve. So, thank you for being here today. I can't wait to have you back next week for the next episode. But until then, I am sending you all of my wishes as you continue your own journey to fertility.
The most common thing I hear from students who are on their fertility journey is that the stress of trying to conceive has taken over their life. Your days end up being filled with endless appointments, navigating pregnancy announcements. You're trying to eat right, take all your supplements, and it is all you think about from the moment you wake up. I designed the Element Fertility Yoga course to support your body, your mind, and your mental health in 3 important ways: to synchronize your hormones, increase circulation and blood flow, and to help regulate your nervous system. But on top of this, the greatest gift that you can give yourself throughout this journey is a sense of peace, to help you calm your mind and just make this process feel easier. Every single one of my students tell me that this is the first thing they notice after starting a yoga, meditation, and breathwork practice. But on top of this, you have the amazing benefit of actually supporting and increasing your fertility. Studies have shown that those participating in mind-body programs as they're trying to conceive have success rates 3 times greater than those who don't. The course I've designed walks you through natural conception as well as fertility treatments and IVF cycles. And the best part is you can work through it at your own pace in the comfort of your home. The practices start from just 10 minutes per day. To learn more, visit elementpilatesyoga.com or see the link in the show notes.